Here, for example, I can just have a 3D view, see all the various regions that are available here, and also have a view of the customer stories in like a specific region. Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's yet another beautiful Saturday morning and I'm just soaking in all the good vibes today. So last week we kicked off things with an introduction to cloud computing concepts. Yeah, clouds aren't just about rain, And thank you for the comments. Thank you for the thoughts that you put in the comment section. So where are we? Today we are diving into the next topic, that is module 2. So yay, I'm just excited to see us moving forward, and it's all about the AWS Global Infrastructure, or the Cloud Atlas as I call it. And yeah, let's get started. So some of the questions you might be asking yourself after we did an introduction to cloud computing and we said what is AWS, yeah? But where is AWS in this case? And that's where the AWS Global Infrastructure comes in. And some of the topics that we'll be discussing today will be related to data centers, which I already did an intro to, but just a repetition. And some new concepts like what are availability zones? What do we mean by the term regions? What are the AWS local zones? What are edge locations? And these are just concepts that make up the AWS global infrastructure as a whole. So by the end of the whole session, I hope you'll have an understanding of where exactly is AWS and how do we access the AWS services. So let's dive right in with an introduction to data centers. And uh, AWS pioneered cloud computing in 2006. Where was I? I don't know. 2006. Oh my God. But this was to provide like rapid and secure infrastructure in this case. So AWS services operate within data centers. And when we talk about cloud computing, remember, it's not that data centers are not there. They're there. It's just that it's not you who manages them, but AWS takes care of the managing aspect of this data center. So these data centers contain thousands of servers. Actually, a data center is a building which consists of around 50K to 80K servers. But these data centers in AWS are running in undisclosed areas for security purposes. Yeah. So each location is equipped with its own network hardware, and AWS continuously innovates on the design and systems of these data centers just to make sure they protect the data centers against any man-made or natural risks. So today we will see this. AWS has provided like data centers at a large and uh, highly global scale. The next point being data centers are grouped into availability zones, and this takes us into the next concept of what is an availability zone. And availability zones are a cluster of data centers basically. So you connect maybe 1, 2, 3 data centers, I don't know how many, just a cluster of data centers within a geographical location make an availability zone. So if you look at this picture over here, so we have a couple of data centers, and these data centers make up an availability zone. Okay, each region typically has around 2 to 6 availability zones, and we'll see this when we get into the demonstration part of it. And one of the benefits of having this multiple availability zone configuration, as you can see here, we have a region, but we have data centers in different availability zone. So one of the benefits of this multiple AZ, or we call it multi-AZ configuration, is just to deliver high availability from the term availability zone. So high availability of AWS resources. And all these availability zones are independently powered and have like a redundant networking aspect. So they have redundant power, redundant networking, redundant connectivity in an AWS region, which we'll see what a region is. So when you launch a server in AWS, you have to select the availability zone where you are going to launch this server in, or let AWS choose for you. So with this multi-AZ configuration, in case one server fails, you can design your application so that a server in another availability zone can handle those requests. And when you get to compute, this will make more sense. We've discussed about the connectivity where it's redundant, and these connections are high bandwidth connections with low latency private links. So I'm here sure you have heard me talking about a region and what is a region. So a region is just a geographical location basically, and from here you can see a map with a couple of regions: Cape Town, North Virginia, London, Sweden. Yeah, so regions are isolated from each other, and uh, um, different from the availability zones where AWS replicates some resources across availability zones. AWS does not replicate resources across regions automatically. So unless you set this up. So when you view resources, most of the times, you will only see the resources that are tied in the region that you have selected. So regions, of course, are clusters of data centers within availability zones. So multiple data centers make up an availability zone, and then multiple availability zones make up a region. And these regions are all over the world, and they have like a naming convention, which we'll see when we get into the console, like US East 1, and we'll see what this means. Remember, as I mentioned, we launch services in specific regions. So most services are scoped to a specific region, and this ensures that that resources stay within the chosen geographical area. So let's just take a tour into the global infrastructure and what it consists of. So this is the AWS Global Infrastructure documentation page. And if we look at the overview of it, we'll see that we have like 34 launched regions already, and all these have multiple availability zones in it. We have a total of 108 availability zones, and we'll get into the points of presence in a moment. So you can see that what is marked green are some of the regions available. For example, you can see here in Cape Town, there is a region, Sao Paulo. We have also government cloud regions, Canada, all this, yeah. So I think Melbourne is the latest region, which was launched in 2023, and you can also see the number of availability zones that it has. And you also have like the regions coming soon in red, for example, Kingdom of Saudi, Germany, there is a region upcoming in Germany. Yeah, all these regions are just geographical locations, and then they have multiple availability zones in them. For example, you can see Cape Town has like 3 availability zones, and these are availability zones. One availability zones contains multiple data centers in it. What are some of the key factors to consider when selecting an AWS region? So we have governance and compliance, and this has to do with legal requirements. Yeah. So if you have any legal requirements based on data governance, based on privacy laws, for example, data cannot leave this specific region, then you'll have to select the right region based on that compliance requirement. Next thing is latency, and this has to do with close proximity to customers. Yeah, so you want to launch your resources nearer to your customers because close proximity means better performance and very low latency in that case. The third thing is service availability. So you have to know that not all AWS services are available in all AWS regions. You have to make sure that that service that you're requesting for is available in the specific region which you're choosing. And the last one is cost, where different regions have very different costs. So research the pricing for the services that you plan to use and compare cost to make the best decision for your workloads. So speaking of these requirements, um we have like some of the compliance programs that AWS, complies with, and you can also see some of them here, for example, which are global, which are specific to maybe specific countries. So you can see all those compliance programs just to make sure that you are complying, with any laws, any regulations, any government requirements. So you can view per country, per region, make sure you're complying with this specific standard. So all the compliance programs are available in this specific page. Speaking of latency, there is this tool, CLOUDPING.INFO page, allows you to measure latency from your browser just to various cloud provider data centers. So in this case, I'm from Kenya, and I can see the latency, for example, when I use the Virginia region, Ohio, Spain, all this. And you can also see how Cape Town region, I'm getting like 95 millisecond latency or so. So you can use this just to test the latency and make sure you are selecting a region which is closer to your customer. So if I have my customers in Canada, then I might want to create my resources in Canada. And then for the cost, we also have the pricing calculator tool in AWS, which allows you to just measure the cost across various different regions. And this is not a service that is available like inside the console. You can just access the AWS pricing calculator without having an AWS account or so. So here you can come here, create estimates of services within different regions and just get a view of how this works. So you see here, you can select a specific region. For example, I can select in this case North Virginia, a specific service. In this case, we have not tackled any services yet, but I can use S3, which is just a storage service. So you can configure that, and we have some things to select. So I'll just keep this for now. And for example, enter 10,000 GB per month. So I save and maybe add the same service in another region. So let's say maybe Europe. Europe, okay. And still the same service. So let's just select S3 again. Same gigabytes. It was like 10,000 GB. So 10,000 GB from the Frankfurt region. And then maybe your last region, South America. Yeah, Sao Paulo is good. Let's see how the cost differs. Let me save and then view the summary. So you can see the difference over here. Same GBs, same settings, same service in different regions. So you can see North Virginia, we have like 230 USD per month, but in Europe, the price changes, and in South America, oh, it's like almost 2 times the price, yeah. And there are very different reasons for this, maybe taxing, electricity, all these costs differ in different countries, yeah. So pricing is something that you should have to consider before selecting a region. And how do you select a region? When you go to the AWS console, here is the here's the place where you choose the region where you want to launch your resources in. So you can choose if you want to launch resources in Ohio, then you just choose the Ohio region and then launch all your resources in there. So it's that simple. Very cool, yeah. So next thing I want to talk about is the AWS local zones. So with the local zones, we have the AWS infrastructure at the edge. That means that we have the infrastructure closer to the customers here. So for example, we have our region which is located in Cape Town here. But then we have lots of users in Nairobi. We have maybe a media streaming application or a live streaming application, and I have it hosted in Nairobi. So if I want like very low latency, then I'll create a local. So I'll select a local zone which is in Nairobi, and it will give me access to the local, maybe compute databases, just other services, so I can access them locally and get like very low latency. But this has a direct connection to the services in the AWS region. So I can still access the services in the AWS region in Cape Town. But for example, local compute or local processing, I can do local processing from the local zone. So I don't think we have a local zone in Nairobi, but we have one in Lagos, Nigeria, yeah. So, for the African region, which I'll show you in a moment. So the purpose of local zones is basically to deliver low latency applications. And some of these applications include, for example, media and entertainment content creation, yeah. So if you have like live production, video editing, and graphics intensive workstations for artists, yeah, you might want to utilize local zones. Real-time multiplayer gaming sessions, to maintain a reliable gaming experience, you might want to utilize the local zones. You have machine learning, hosting, and training. These are things which require very high performance and low latency. Inferencing, you might want to utilize local zones for this. Augmented reality and virtual reality, you want immersive entertainment, data-driven insights, virtual training, engaging virtual training experiences. So you can utilize the AWS local zones for this. So customers can innovate faster, solve complex, compute intensive, latency sensitive problems by using applications which are hosted in AWS local zones. So before I get into the demo part of it, so let me talk about something else, which is the edge locations. And edge locations actually operate in major cities worldwide. And we saw from the console, AWS mentioning they have like over 600 points of presence. Yeah. So an edge location is the nearest point to a request of an AWS service. And edge locations, how it works, they receive requests and cache copies of your content for faster delivery. So the technique used here is about caching content nearer to the users. Now I know we have like an edge location. Yeah, we have an edge location or a point of presence in Nairobi, whereby, for example, if we have users located in Nairobi, we can have like reduced latency access to AWS services really faster. But this does not mean that now we have the data centers or everything set up, the whole data center infrastructure and availability zone set up in Nairobi. This is just where we can cache copies of our data, copies of frequently accessed data nearer to the user, so that if I want access to something specific, I can get it with like very low latency. So we have like edge locations, we have multiple edge locations, for example, those in purple, and we also have the regional edge caches, which are used when you have content that is not frequently accessed enough to remain in an edge location. But yeah, so regional edge caches absorb this content and provide an alternative to the need to retrieve that content from the origin server. So one common use case for edge locations is to just serve content closer to the customers. Yeah. Major differences between sorry. So major differences between local zones and edge locations. Yeah. Local zones, we use that when we want to process our data locally and have like very low latency access and a consistent AWS experience. And we mentioned some of the use cases where you might need local zones, and you will realize most of them have to do with accessing data locally, local data processing. But with edge locations, this is not about processing data locally. This is just about fast delivery of content. If I want access to this video, I need it in milliseconds, yeah. But this doesn't have to do with processing of data. So we are just caching data somewhere closer to the, and a cache is something similar to a copy a copy of data or a backup of data. Yeah, so we are placing copy of that data nearer to the users, and that data has to be frequently accessed. And this has to do with better user experience. When a user wants to access specific data, let them get it faster. But with local zones, we want to do like local data processing, which needs like very high compute requirements. Okay, so let's get back into the demo, just to see the global infrastructure again and the concepts of uh, points of presence, local zones. Yeah. So if we look at the regions and availability zones section, we can see the regions which are available in the whole continent or so. So let me just look at Africa. So we have the African region located in Cape Town. It has 3 availability zones, and we can also see the edge locations that are available in Africa. So we have one in Cape Town, one in Joburg, Lagos, and Nairobi, Kenya. And this is where caching of content happens, so that users in those cities can access content with very low latency. Yeah, so and we have lots of points of presence, and points of presence is a combination of the edge locations, multiple edge locations, and the regional edge caches. So if you see the words POPs or points of presence, don't be alarmed. The next thing is the local zone. Now, local zones have to be enabled within the AWS console. So, for example, if I look at the North Virginia region, in North Virginia region, we have around 6 availability zone. So, I can also check that from here, which is a 3D view of the AWS Global Infrastructure. I really love this uh, page. So let it load. Yeah, so let's explore. Not like that, but here, for example, I can just have a 3D view, see all the various regions that are available here, and also have a view of the customer stories in like a specific region. For example, Dish, Bell, you can read the customer stories. See, for example, how Vodafone has been utilizing. So it's using service called AWS Wavelength, which we might cover later. But you can see how these services are utilizing the AWS Global Infrastructure. So let me go back to the US region, to the world location, sorry. So for example, if I look at North America region, I can see we have like lots of regions. So we have Oregon, North California, and we also have the GovCloud regions, which are not available to us. Yeah, you cannot access this. We have the Ohio region, the North Virginia region. And if I click at the North Virginia region, you can see that it has access to around 6 availability zones. We can also see the availability zones available. You can see how there are a lot in each specific region, and also an explanation of what an availability zone is. We also have like a point of presence available, the one in blue. So we have one here. Don't know, two. Yeah, I think two still in the still in South Africa. Yeah, and local zones too. So can't scroll this, but you can see the definition is also there. Local zone place compute storage in database and other selected AWS services closer to end users. You run high demanding applications with single digit millisecond latency. And yeah, all the definitions are in there as well. So this is a really cool place to get started if you want to understand the AWS global infrastructure in all the different regions. Yeah. So getting back to my console, um, with the edge location. So this is something that is utilized with some of the edge services, for example, CloudFront. And when you use such a service, it normally routes your traffic across, all the edge locations if you configure or if you want some. So, but we can see the regions over here. And if I look at the North Virginia region, it has around 6 availability zones in it. Yeah. So if I want to launch a service, for example, let me use EC2. We'll discuss EC2 sooner. It's just a compute service, a server in the AWS cloud. And let me try launch one or look at one. So you can see all these instances in different availability zones. So you can see one is in US East 1 is the name of the region. As I mentioned, all regions have a naming convention. Yeah, so US East 1 represents the North Virginia region, US East 2 represents the Ohio region, just like that. Now the availability zones have like the letters added, A, B, C, D, E, and F. So if you launch an instance, yeah, or a server, I won't go through the process. I'll just show you how you select the AZ in this case. Okay, so under the network settings, where we're going to launch this server, you can see an option where we select the specific subnets, which we'll discuss also later when we get to networking. But here is where you can see that each instance has to be in a specific availability zone. And you can see all the availability zones available over here. 1D, 1F, 1A. So there are around 6 in US East 1. The next thing I would like to show you is the concept of the local zones, which is also available in this EC2 section. So with the local zones, I have to go back to the EC2 dashboard. And you can see the zones available over here, 6, but you can enable additional zones. Yeah. And to enable additional zones, you can see the zone types. There are availability zones, but there are also local zones which are contained in major cities. Yeah. For example, Atlanta, Chicago, yeah, all those, New York, Miami. So you can select a local zone. For example, if I have like a machine learning, something to do with machine learning application, and I am located in Miami, then I can just go there and enable that local zone. That will allow me to launch my servers in that specific local zone. So that is the concept of local zones, and we also have some case studies on how companies are utilizing local zones for this. So esports engine delivers global gaming broadcasts with single-digit millisecond latency using local zones, and they have their story of how they have utilized this type of infrastructure to help them deliver very low latency access to their customers. Yeah. So those are the major features of the AWS Global Infrastructure. And yeah, I think I've covered everything that I need to cover today. So I hope you learned something, and thank you. So back to our slides. That marks the end of it, and today's meme, of course, we need memes for every service. So you can see there that US East 1 is always crowded, and US West 2, very few people chilling there. That's just us, yeah. If I go back to my console, you'll realize that North Virginia, US is that, it's always the default region. And I'll always have lots of resources over here. But US is too chill, just chilling and vibing. Anyway, that marks the end of this. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Next week we are getting into I am who I say I am. Yeah, AWS I am, identity and access management. Yeah, I'm so excited for that one. Anyway, bye guys. Have a lovely day. To more learning. to more awesomeness with AWS, to more cloud. See you in the next one.